My name is Caron Rawnsley. I'm an Irish citizen as well as a British citizen. I have a dual nationality, and I was born in France, in fact, near Corsica, not far from where Napoleon Bonaparte was born. But I hope, have many of the traits of Napoleon Bonaparte, apart from a grandiose vision of a beautiful world that I want to see our next generations living in. I want to see the world spending its resources, its huge resources which it has accumulated, not only financial but intellectual resources that we now have available, on protection of nature, on the beautification of the heritage that we have, on the preservation and dissemination of peace and technologies that support peace. This is what I hope for, because war and the destructive tendencies of humanity are leading us all in the wrong direction. They are the most dangerous thing that we now face. The declining environment, the world's gross overpopulation, and our general movement towards our own destruction by allowing our governments to arm themselves up to the teeth. All this is going in a very much the wrong direction. So as a human being, I say to anyone who hears or watches this film, let us work for peace above all in the world we live in. And I'm an environmentalist because I want to see the facilities opened to the young. I want to see these places where they can learn to swim, they can learn to appreciate wildlife, fish, birds. All the ecosystem is focused around these water points because they're like oases in the desert. You've got urban concrete everywhere, dirty roads, open sewers. That's the average city centre. It's like that. That's the reality. I'm not going to play around with pretty pictures of Indian cities. They are horrible places mostly. Disgusting, untidy and dirty. That is what a city is nowadays. Whereas this place is a cool, calm reflection of a past era that has disappeared nearly in the modern world. This is the peace and tranquility of an oasis. This place actually is full of catfish. You won't see them because they stay down very deep, and the catfish all come to the surface when it rains. So this is a very beautiful place, the Panchmaji Bowery, which is unknown even to the area here. If you ask the neighbours what this place is, they don't know. These places are totally neglected. They're a forgotten world, a forgotten and pristine world that can operate just as they did 300 or 400 years ago when they were initially built, by women usually, by the queens and the concubines of the great Maharajas of Jodhpur and the neighbouring cities, Bundi and the other ones. These are places of great history, great and fantastic history, independent, unique histories each city has. They were often at loggerheads with each other. I think there were wars going on periodically, but they were limited wars. They were not general wars like the modern world is capable of generating. These wars involved a few thousand men sort of facing off against one another and having a sword fight here and there, and a few cannonballs going over the wall. So they were not the terrible things that we've now seen happening in places like Syria. We would always hope that peace will prevail in the world we live in. And that's, I think, where education should give all its focus now, to building peaceable citizens, people who love peace, revere peace, and follow the peaceful ways that were taught by Mahatma Gandhi to his followers, and have been taught by the generations of great men of India who taught peace from Ashoka onwards, and even other leaders in ancient history, the great philosophers of India who taught only peace, and was the basic reason for their work in educating people, was to lead them towards an understanding that we are all of one great family. We are humanity, and we must work for the next generation to make a peaceful world for them. That is the most important work that we can do in our lives. I believe. And I say this with all sincerity, that we must work for a world where conflict is no longer needed between warring governments who bring war upon their own societies and then escape the blame and the punishment that they should justifiably be dealt with by the next generation. The Nuremberg trials were a farce compared to the terrible suffering brought. 50 million people died in the Second World War. 50 million ordinary people, mostly women and children, were murdered in cold blood by the armies of the warring sides. That must not happen again. That must not happen to the people of the 21st century. They must never see such atrocity and barbarism again. We must make a world where everyone understands their common need for a good, tranquil and peace-orientated society. Not a passive society, but a peace-orientated society, where the ecosystem is guarded and developed and reinstated as a sacred duty of every citizen to build ecosystems that are maintainable. Reforestation, where all roadsides carry trees in thick rows to break the wind and to give shade to the passers-by and the travellers. Where every single water body is surrounded by forests and trees full of bird life. Where every school is a garden for the children of the next generation. We must do this, because if we don't, we're going to have war again. We're going to have destruction. We're going to have competition that leads to destruction. And we're going to have the next generations living in misery in refugee camps. We're going to have murder on a huge scale that will be unbelievable even to the 20th century. We must make a world of peace. And I would say any work I do on environmental issues like this, keeping these water systems clean, is just a little tiny pinprick compared to the greater work of generating peace in our institutions, in the minds of our young, and in the next generations that come and follow us into this beautiful earth and world that we live in. They must come with only that orientation that peace must be maintained and developed, and our whole culture must orientate in that direction. So when I want children to come to these places, I want them to learn about the environmental crisis that the world is facing. I want them to understand that water is sacred, a blessing from nature that is recyclable for eternity. For as long as the world exists, the same waters will be recycled again and again through our bodies, through our mouths, through our weather systems. These will be maintained indefinitely if we respect them, if we understand them and understand those cycles. We too can continue to maintain our life cycles, the next generations that follow us. Just like water, human beings have a life cycle, and when that life cycle is finished, they passed it on to the next generation, like a relay. And in the same way, water is exactly like this. Water is a relay of cycles, and that relay is best when it's tranquil and stable and not disturbed by conflict, by wars, by greed, by people taking more than their fair share, but by sharing everything they have with nature and with their fellow humanity. We must do that, and we must do that because that is the only way we can actually have a future. That is the only way. There is no other alternative, in fact. And if we understand that, we will be able to live for hundreds of years into the future. Maybe not more, but maybe a few hundred years, if we can have that time given to us by nature, by the gods that empower our world. We will be able to live long enough to build real civilization, which won't be a competition to destruction. It will be a civilization of life, and pro-life values will dominate the generations that come. This is my prayer for the world that I live in.